Now I have four questions.
Okay.
Now, can you clarify the business about keeping the grand jury open, which won't be the same grand jury, and you said you've done the substantial bulk of your investigation is finished. I mean, does that mean, in layman's terms, that you're just kind of in a mopping up phase? Or are there things that you're actively pursuing? And if so, can you explain to us, lay people, if you bring this to a grand jury that hasn't been involved for 24 months, what does that, it just feels like 24 years, what does that entail? Do you have to sort of start from zero with them and bring them up to speed?
And I think it varies on what you need to do, but you could probably talk to lots of people who don't know the case who could tell you what the general experience is, but if I try to opine on how that happens, there's no way you're not going to look at my answer as telling you what's going on with this grand jury investigation, and I can't do that. Carol.
Do you feel that the Judge Tatel, Judge Hogan, and other circuit judges' references to an important evidence of an important potential breach of public trust that was carried in your ex parte submissions last year, do you feel that the charges you've brought now are in line with the submissions you made then and what you said you had potential evidence of?
I think there's two questions in that, which I'll say is our charge, does that line up with the secret classified filing I can't talk about, so I won't comment because I don't want to give you an idea of what's in there. However, if you're asking, do these charges vindicate a serious breach of the public trust? Absolutely. If you're going to have a grand jury investigation into the improper disclosure of national security information, you're going to have someone in the position Mr. Libby is, lying to the FBI on 2 occasions and going before a grand jury on 2 occasions and telling false testimony, obstructing the investigation, that to me defines a serious breach of the public trust.
Thanks. You had said that the substantial bulk of the work in this investigation is completed. A lot of the players, some of the lawyers, some of the people involved flew around through Watergate, through Iran-Contra, through Monica Lewinsky. Does this case, based on what you know now, remotely compare to the specter of any of those cases?
I don't even know how to answer that. I'm just going to take a dive. Sorry. Someone hasn't asked one yet. I just want to be sure. Yes, ma'am.
Did you seek any counts that the grand jury did not return?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Someone gave me a big shake of a head no that I'm not allowed to say it, so I better not do it. Yes.
Can you characterize for us at all the dynamic of the grand jury? Were the members tired? Were they particularly active or involved? Were they worried that this involves such high-ranking officials? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
I can only say this. I can't comment on their emotions or reactions, but I'll say this. They were very, very hard-working grand jury, very, very dedicated, and I don't think people fully appreciate how an investigative grand jury can be different. Sometimes you can be fairly routine to go into a grand jury and say, Mr. Eckenrode is going to testify about a bank robbery. Here's a picture of the guy with the gun in his hand with the note. Here's his fingerprint on the note, and here's his confession. How do you vote? This grand jury is very, very different. And what struck me, the one thing that's in the public record, which I hadn't realized would be there, but if you look at the indictment alleges that Mr. Libby is charged with perjury in response to a grand juror's question. And it's phrased in there that the grand jury would like to know. And I just think it shows that the grand jury, people take their obligations seriously. They ask questions. And in this country, we have people who probably got notices who thought, what a pain in the neck this is going to be. And it was a pain in the neck for them for 2 years. But they worked very, very hard. And if they asked a question and someone lied to them, that was vindicated. Yes, sir.
Did Bob Novak cooperate with your investigation?
I can't comment.
Is there anything that would prevent anyone who was a witness from telling of their experiences?
And,
in grand jury rules, I think.
The grand jury rules limit the prosecutors. They don't limit the witnesses. I know there's a debate out there from people as to who should say what about what, and I'm not wading into that other than I have asked people as a request not to compromise the investigation by talking, and I'll just leave it at that. Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate needing to impanel a new grand jury in order to wrap up?
I'm not going to comment.
Do you need a new grand jury? Would you need to impanel a new one if you wanted to bring further charges?
I can't charge myself, so if we wanted to bring charges, we'd need a grand jury to do that, but I don't want to comment beyond that. I think here's what I'm trying to convey. We're not quite done, but I don't want to add to a feverish pitch. It's very, very routine that you keep a grand jury available for what you might need, and that's all I can say because of the rules of grand jury secrecy, and that's it. Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility of any anybody else being charged.
I'm not going to, I can't go beyond that, sorry.
It's legal jeopardy right now.
Okay. That one, that didn't get any better. You're getting cold, not hot.
You said you couldn't comment outside the four corners of the indictment, but you did make a generalization when you said that all government agencies cooperated. There were some deferred emails that were produced by the White House very late in the investigation that, in fact, in part triggered the expansion and earlier the appointment of the counsel, as I understand. Do you stand by the statement that all government agencies cooperated? And was the delay of the emails inadvertent or purposeful, something you looked at?
And I realize you built some facts into the question that I'm not going to adopt, and so I'm not going to get into reports in the newspapers that certain things happened, and then if I'm not allowed to confirm or deny them, build it into a question. All I'll tell you is I'll stand behind it. Every agency cooperated with us.
Can you tell us just in layman's terms, because I don't know a lot about this, what is the maximum sentence that Mr. Libby could receive if he's charged with all?
I believe the obstruction count has a maximum penalty of 10 years. The perjury counts and the false statements counts each have a maximum penalty of 5 years. So there's 4 5-year counts and 1 10-year count. Now, for a layman, I would step back, and there are these guidelines called the sentencing guidelines that take certain offenses, and they are now non-binding on the federal judges, but they would take into account all sorts of factors about the offense, the circumstances, the person who committed it, if the person were convicted. And I don't want to jump past, there's a trial there, but if they were convicted, the judge would look to the sentencing guidelines for guidance as to what actual sentence would be imposed. So there's plenty of room, but it's, there's no mandatory minimum. It's 0 to 50 years, and that would be a judge's decision. Anyone who's not asked the question? Yes, sir.
Does Mr. Libby have any say now that he has resigned, and of course you brought this indictment today, to then come to you and say, well, this is, in other words, break open some of these facts? And are there ramifications both at the State Department and DOD that you're then able to also investigate? And what is going on? To what degree has that shaped the speech that Secretary Powell gave at the United Nations that many people have criticized him for?
And I don't think I can answer any of that. I'm not going to speculate what Mr. Libby would do, and I haven't been tracking the ramifications at the various agencies. We've had our hands full. Yes.
Just to go back to your comments about the damage that was done by disclosing Valerie Wilson's identity. And there's some critics who would suggest that she was not your traditional covert agent, really in harm's way, that she was working essentially a desk job, at Langley. Just to answer those critics, can you elaborate on, aside from the fact that some of her neighbors may now know that she was, and the country for that matter, that she was a CIA officer, what jeopardy, what harm was there by disclosing her identity?
And I'm not. I will say this: I won't touch the specific damage assessment of what specific damage was caused by her compromise. I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'll let the CIA speak to that if they wish or not. I will say this to the CIA people who are going out at a time that we need more human intelligence. I think everyone agrees that. At a time when we need our spy agencies to have people work there, I think just the notion that someone's identity could be compromised lightly, to me, compromises the ability to recruit people and say, come work for us, come work for the government, come be trained, come invest your time, come work anonymously here, wherever else. Go do jobs for the benefit of the country for which people will not thank you because they will not know. They need to know that we will not cast their anonymity aside lightly. And that's damage, but I'm not going to go beyond that. Yes, sir.
And what happens to Mr. Libby now? What's your understanding? Is he going to be arrested, or will he just have to appear at the first hearing? What's your agreement with his attorneys on that?
My understanding is we will not be arresting Mr. Libby. We will arrange for him to appear before whatever judge was assigned, which you may know who the judge was assigned, but I don't because I came from there to here. And whatever the judge tells us to do, we will do.